Hello everybody. I wanted to talk with you about the creation of no-fly zones and the potential gameplay scenarios that they're going to establish. Adding intricacy to anything is a fine tightrope to walk. If you don't add enough, things tend to get boring. Add too much, and things can get tedious. But the no-fly zone seems to provide just enough gameplay to make exploration interesting without having to overcomplicate it. Even traveling between locations in space is going to be limited to help expand out the experience in a fun way, by providing a unique progression to the series of paths we're going to be traveling along as we explore the cosmos. It's also going to create more potential for interesting gameplay experiences that wouldn't otherwise exist if you could just go right to your destination. Whether or not an object can be selected for quantum travel is going to be determined by gravitational values. Larger objects can be detected at further distances, but any smaller object that's orbiting it will be completely masked to sensors by the larger entity's presence. This means that you'll not be able to travel directly from point A to point B, but instead you'll have to move into the orbit of a larger body first before you can detect any destinations that can also be found within its orbit. The destination path is going to be planets, moons, and then stations. This form of pathing is simply going to provide more levels of gameplay for us to indulge in. After all, why would you have a ground vehicle when you can just fly everywhere? Why would you explore when you could just pass overhead and scan the ground, then land right where you wanted to go to? First off, it's something that's going to provide a limiting factor as to where we can go once we touch down on the surface of a planet or moon. Sometimes having instant access to everywhere at any time can feel unchallenging, like there's no sense of accomplishment to what you're doing. One kind of no-fly zone that we've already seen comes in the form of various atmospheric conditions that are too hazardous to fly through, usually taking form as an invisible wall of turbulent winds, and on an even more visual level, giant storms that are covered by a blanket of dark, lightning-filled clouds, or massive sandstorms that keeps even the most stout ship from traveling through them. They could also cover the area visually, keeping you from surveying what lies within it from above. At first, I had a little issue with dealing conceptually with the notion of a no-fly zone and how they would work, until after I started doing research into Selene. Its surface is dotted with fields that are full of huge geysers that form a blanket of noxious gas that creates an environment which is going to be inhospitable to low-flying ships. Just how this prevents you from flying is going to be a matter for the creative element at CIG to contend with. Does it create an air pocket that drops your ship like a rock? Or are the gases corrosive to your engine parts, which will start to eat away at them if you don't turn around right away, and cause your thrusters to fail if you linger for too long? It also makes sense that these kind of no-fly zones are going to have the highest probability of containing wrecks. After all, it shows the perils that go along with trying to navigate through areas which were meant to be avoided, and the ramifications that come from not heeding such warnings. It also provides the motivation to explore them on foot or by using a vehicle, since that's going to be the most logical place to look for things to scavenge. Another and more common version of the no-fly zone that we're going to be coming across will be the artificially created proximity that encompasses medium-sized or larger settlements. Patrolling ships and gun emplacements will most likely be used to enforce the no-fly rule, and if you violate this airspace either intentionally or by accident, you'd be giving a warning and a short time frame to turn around and get out before a criminal rating is placed on you. Then the batteries will open fire, and a police response will come to collect whatever's left. There are already landing zones which are more than likely going to have no-fly zones surrounding them, like Hurston and Area 18, to keep you from trolling people who just want to have a relaxing day at the mall, and to keep people from just chaotically landing wherever they want. It would be even more interesting if special permissions could be given to players to enter these zones legally during specific missions, as long as they adhere to certain conditions like having to keep their weapons powered down and sticking to landing zone pads that can be found within it. There is going to be a new type of settlement that was referred to as a village, that in size sits somewhere between an outpost and the well-populated hero zones that you'll find in most planets. I imagine the entire area would be one large no-fly zone requiring you to land outside the city limits, where various refill stations would be located, forcing you to go the rest of the way using some kind of gravlev bike or rover. These locations would seem to be particularly fun for pirates to raid. They'd be just big enough to prove to be challenging, but not so big that you'd need half a battle fleet to take one on. Batteries would open fire in defense of the settlement, and attack ships would take off from their landing pads to meet the aggressors. Even lawful players could voluntarily choose or be given a mission to join the defense of the area and get rewarded for their efforts. Over time, the NPC population would respawn. Good emplacements would get repaired, and if the pirates did return, perhaps this time they'd find an Idris parked out front to contend with. The aftermath of such events could generate player-specific missions that ask for them to help administer repairs, or sets them out to get some gravely needed supplies that the colony would pay top credits to get, and to get fast. Overall, the creation of no-fly zones can greatly complicate things in a good way and provide a much-needed additional level of gameplay to contend with, making the journey just that much more interesting. The no-fly zone is also the answer to the question, what good is my Gravlev bike's ability to hover if it can now fly? Is because no-fly zones are going to be prevalent to come across and used from everything from dividing up typographical areas to restricting where you can travel to and how close to populated areas you can get. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll be seeing you in the verse.